Hi, everyone. We'll just give it a few more seconds here to let people join in. Thank you so much for joining us today. All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to our Floreciendo Juntos Gardening with Purpose and Culture webinar as we celebrate Latino Conservation Week 2025. Today, we will share some tips and insights into creating your own garden at home as we also honor our heritage and culture. Antes de empezar, quiero anunciar que si gustas escuchar esta presentación en español, puedes hacerlo haciéndole clic al icono del globo en la barra de abajo en Zoom. Natalia, nuestra traductora, estará traduciendo la presentación al español. Bienvenidos a todos. My name is Ana Jimenez, and I am the Conservation Network Manager here at Hispanic Access. Thank you for joining us today as we celebrate 12 years of building stronger connections between Latino communities and the outdoors through our Latino Conservation Week initiative. And without further ado, let's get started. We are Hispanic Access Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to connecting Latinos and others with partners and opportunities to improve lives and create an equitable society. Also joining us today are our amazing partners at Latinos in Heritage Conservation, or LHC. LHC is a national nonprofit organization dedicated to preserving, celebrating, and elevating Latinx heritage across the United States and its territories. And now on to our amazing panelists. Joining us today is Luis Rubio-Aguirre. Luis Rubio is a passionate nature guide, regenerative agriculture specialist, educator, and community leader based in South Lake Tahoe. He is originally from Ameca, Jalisco, Mexico, and he immigrated to the United States in 1995, where he found his calling in the mountains, forests, and soils of the Sierra Nevada. With a background as a PSIA certified ski instructor and resort trainer, Luis has spent years guiding people through the beauty and lessons of the natural world. His work has since expanded to include nature therapy, regenerative, land stewardship, and cultural education. Always rooted in a deep reverence for creation, ancestral knowledge, and the vital connection between people and place. Luis is also a member of our conservation network. And also joining us today is Zayla Mota Casper. She is a seasoned historic preservationist dedicated to advancing heritage conservation, community empowerment, and preservation equity. As the inaugural executive director of Latinos in Heritage Conservation, she leads the national effort to preserve Latinx places, stories, and cultural heritage. Previously, she served as a senior field officer at the National Trust for Historic Preservation, safeguarding America's unique historic treasures. Mota Casper holds a Master's of Fine Arts in Historic Preservation from the Savannah College of Art and Design, where her groundbreaking thesis addressed the underrepresentation of Latinx heritage and advocated for a national conservation strategy. She also holds a Bachelor of Arts in Visual Arts from the Texas Women's University. We are grateful to our amazing panelists who are here to share their knowledge, insight, and personal journey. And with that, let's dive in. Luis, I'll pass it over to you.
Hola, welcome everybody, bienvenidos. So today I want to encourage you first to take notes if you don't have a pen and paper out yet. And once you start taking notes, let whatever inspires you stick, so write that down. And all the other stuff will come later, trust me. And then ask questions in the chat, please, so we can go through those a little bit later. But my intention is to inform you and inspire you to be daring. So these are the talking points I'll be going through today. So we'll be going through why garden, pollinator-friendly gardens, eco-friendly gardens, planning your space, and the cultural significance. So Anna, if you can please go to the next one. So why garden? Right? I'm going to read something to you, and then I'm going to go through some talking points too. So in today's world, we're used to everything happening really, really fast. With just a few clicks, we can get what we want instantly. But there are deeper qualities that are harder to come by, and yet they're what we need the most to find real meaning and connection, not just with ourselves, but with others. So when we don't have patience to keep going, it's really easy to feel lost and anxious. So how can we find these qualities through gardening, right? Patience, persistence, and purpose. Think about something simple like sprouting a seed or even taking care of your plant. So when you watch it grow, you care for it, you water it, you get excited, you get bummed out when it struggles. You're emotionally attached because, like us, plants need a good environment. And that's exactly what persistence and patience can do for us. They'll give you purpose, they give you something to look forward to, something meaningful to invest your time in, right? Okay, so that's called incremental learning. So when you take the time, when you start at the lowest place, let's say, when you start with a small garden, then you can work your way up. So that taking a risk, right? When we think back to when we were kids, it was easy for us to take risks. We explored the world. We made up games. This is how we developed our view, and this is how we developed independence and confidence too. So when you created, say, a game, a piece of art, anything, you learn to deal with the mistakes because as a kid, you don't see the vision in the long run. You see what's in front of you. So instead of failure, it's an invitation to try again and get better. And that's what I want for you. I want for you to start seeing this as a kid, right? To seeing this through the nature of play. So if we can start seeing gardening as sort of a playful way to start learning, then we can really be encouraged to keep it going. So if you've never gardened before, really try to treat it like play. So the little troubles, bugs, weather, plants not cooperating, all that stuff is just an invitation. Okay. So a lot of us are pretty unaware of the value of how we spend our time and energy, and how that actually makes us feel, think, and move in this world. So the good thing about living in the age of information is we can easily access this stuff, right? So starting a new project can be quite intimidating, especially if you don't have any knowledge. So where do we start? I want to point out this picture here, right? In this little picture, you got a potato garden here in the back. We call those potato towers. Got some garlics, some greens here in these two rows, and it's just such an easy way to start your garden, right? Start really little and then go from there. Potato towers, which I'll go through in a little bit. It's just amazing. They're easy to do, and then they give you the most amazing potatoes ever. I also want to mention if you do start buying plants for your house, for your garden, buy something that you have a connection to, something your mom, your dad, your grandparents grew, and then that really will start giving you a little bit more of how do I say it, a little bit more purpose, right? A little bit later in the presentation, I'm going to get into how to plan your space and some sustainable practices. Before I go into that, I wanted to go into pollinators, not just native pollinators, but native plants, native ecosystems, and why that's so important here. Right? So I do have a point here that says connecting to the past, present, and future, honoring the dead. I see our soil, I see the land as a place that it just has so much abundance, and it's full of abundance because not just our ancestors, but also the land has has grown, has given us this foundation, right? So through that foundation, if we do honor it, if we take care of it, we can have that abundance as well. And I'm going to go into something called the biophilia hypothesis. So biophilia is basically saying that we have an innate tendency to seek connections with nature and other forms of natural life because our ancestors, for millennia and millennia, this is where they were, right? This is how they fed themselves. This is where they lived. So biophilia says that when we go into nature, we feel a lot better. that we start seeking different things. We start learning your mind works a lot differently. So you start connecting different pathways. So one of my thoughts is when I see a wildflower field blooming, and when I see spring start to go, it's really that abundance that I'm in awe of. It's the visual of there was nothing there before, and now there's something amazing, and that inspires me to see that abundance in myself as well. Because you have to start somewhere to get anywhere, right? So you have to start with nothing in order to build something. Okay, and let's get into some native bees. Um, Here in North America, we actually have about 4,000 species of native bees out of the 20,000 in the world, and then there's 46 bumblebees just in the United States. I love bumblebees; they kind of defy logic. So, if you don't know much about them, look them up. They're not supposed to be able to fly, but somehow they do. All right, and in this graphic that just popped up, the massive insect decline. It's not just bad for nature; it's bad for everybody. So I was just looking up another chart because this chart's from 2019, and this one says the total decline is at about 40% in 2019. Well, now we're at about 70%, which is it's bad, right? We really need to figure out how to turn this around, and this is exactly what I'll be going into. So, some common pollinators are bees. We all know the bees, right? But some uncommon ones is flies, moths, beetles, and even mosquitoes. So we got to start rethinking about those mosquitoes. Some of the mammals are bats, lemurs, possums, and reptiles. I don't think most people know that reptiles can be pollinators, right? So you got lizards, geckos, and skeeks. Now, native bees are generally better pollinators than the European bee. So this is something that we have to start considering because there's a huge informational act out there about the honeybees, right? We got to take care of the honeybees, take care of the honeybees. But it is really important that we talk about the native bees as well. So did you know that honeybees actually cannot pollinate blueberries or tomatoes? So if you like any of those, we really, really have to start thinking about the other bees here. Honeybees are actually really good at pollinating almond trees. Well, there's different kinds of monoculture stuff that we have. We've kind of trained them to do that, right? All right, can you go to the next graphic here? Now this one is specifically for the monarch. So we can see from the years, right? The new charts are even worse. Again, this one I think is from 2023, but we can see how the numbers fluctuate, but they've been fluctuating downwards instead of trying to stay steady or going up a little bit. Biggest reason here is what I'm going to go into next. So a monarch is actually a specialist insect. If you can go to the next chart here. Go to the next one. I'll mention that either way. Okay, so a specialist insect, right? These are insects that evolved with specific plants. And the reason that it's so important that we keep these ecosystems alive is because, say, with the monarch needs milkweeds to survive. It cannot eat any other plant for its survival. So if we don't have big milkweed ecosystems, which California used to have them everywhere, California, Mexico, all over the US, then the monarch is going to struggle, which is what we saw in that chart and what is going on. So one of the goals here, right, is to try to encourage everybody to plant milkweeds. Because if we just have random little patches, then they really don't see them. They need that abundance. Okay, so that brings me into coevolution. So coevolution is just talking about how for millennia, these plants, these animals, these insects all evolve together. And when you remove one thing, you actually you ruin that ecosystem, and it's not just going to be the plant, it's not just going to be the butterfly, the animal, the tree, it's going to be everything that struggles together. So a good example is the hummingbird beak, right? Hummingbirds evolved with these really long beak to be able to get the nectar out of those long flowers. And then same with the butterflies, they got this really long tongue to be able to fit their tongue into the nectar, and other bees, other insects cannot get that. So we're talking about food and medicine for these animals, right? Same for us. So that brings me into food security. Um, One of the subjects that has been brought up through, let's say, the last 5, 10 years is food security for ourselves, right? And why insects really matter as far as food security, not just for nature, but for ourselves as well. So diversity of native pollinators that actually takes care of our, not just of the forest, but it takes care of, say, our farms. Our not just our big monoculture farms, but our small organic polyculture farms as well. So a diverse ecosystem also produces food that's more densely packed with minerals and nutrients. There are a lot of links to the current food system and widespread illness, such as widespread use of pesticides that are causing cancer, such as non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So if you haven't read anything about the pesticide use, that's pretty prevalent in monoculture and what that's causing as far as us, right? And not just us, the insects. And I encourage you to look into that a little bit more. So the reason that's happening is something that's known as mono versus polyculture. Monoculture basically means one. Polyculture means diversity, so more than one. Oh, in monoculture, I think a lot of us have seen what monoculture looks like. It's like these huge fields of lettuce, these huge fields of corn, huge fields of almond trees. There's just one thing there, and when we do that, we actually welcome disease. We welcome viruses because when there's only one thing there, that means that that virus, that disease, that insect that's going to attack, will has an abundance of it. So he doesn't just attack one tree; he attacks all the trees, and then there's nothing in between to try and mitigate that, right? But in polyculture, which involves growing multiple plant species, using mulch, using compost, trying to mimic the natural ecosystem, this gives the farm, this gives the forest, this gives everything resilience, right? Because it doesn't have one of everything. So an insect, a virus, a disease cannot jump from one tree to the next tree if they're two different ones. It has to find a way to try to attack that next tree, right? So it has a period there where it can't just jump, 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 jump. And in nature, these healthy plant communities are actually supported by pollinators. So they're really, really important. They they're crucial for preventing soil erosion, for improving water quality, and how they do it is if plants aren't pollinated, they cannot grow a seed, right? They need that seed or they need that pollen in order to grow the seed. So if we don't have these insects, we have to do it on our own, and there's just not enough of us to get out there and pollinate stuff. And I don't think we really have the drive to do that either. Um, So how does it help water quality, right? That's kind of crazy to think about. So how does an insect help our water quality? So in our meadows, in our forests, some of these plants can reach up to 20 feet deep. Now, obviously, our trees can reach way deeper than that, but we're talking about a tiny, tiny 1 foot plant with a 20 foot root. That's amazing, right? What that does is it helps that water really seep into the ground and create what we call these natural reservoirs, these water banks. And then with those roots in the ground, it's what holds that soil together. So it creates kind of like a sponge environment where these old dead roots are holding onto water, but they're also creating these channels for everything to be able to go down. And the importance through that is these natural reservoirs actually supply 75% of California's water, right? So you can start thinking about throughout the U.S. how much these meadows and these natural reservoirs really matter as far as clean water goes, right? Because the reservoirs that we've built, they're not the cleanest. Okay, so let's go into the next um, slide here. Layers of succession. I just wanted to show you this. I'm not going to get too far into it, but Primary succession is basically, if you look at the top of this chart, it's bare rock. There is nothing there. We as humans probably haven't seen that very much, right? And then you start going into, after that gets established, once that burns or once a natural disaster, once something happens to the forest where there's some form of destruction, there's secondary succession. Secondary succession really relies on the diversity that was already there. So if there wasn't a lot of diversity there before, it's going to struggle and it's going to have to start all the way at the beginning again. So I want to point out how, if you look at this chart, at the top of the chart, you can see how there's no animals, no insects, no nothing. And as you go along, you really build up all of that. So everything builds up together, right? One can't do without the other. And I really want to tie that into ourselves, our communities, our diversities. So I wanted to talk about uh, diversity within our culture. So being bicultural, bilingual, that really is such an important thing in this time, right? Because we are we are builders of our communities. You can see our culture everywhere, and if you compare it um, to the layers of succession, to how the natural world is structured, we can really start to see there that if we don't fight to keep our culture, if we don't really work to keep it right, then when these natural disasters come, when things change in life, then we're going to struggle to teach it to our kids. We're going to struggle to really maintain it. Okay, go to the next slide for me, which is really just another part of layers of succession. So you can see bare rock, and as we go up, right, everything builds up together. All right, next slide. So this one's really cool. Um, these are 8 native plants for pollinators, and why I love this is all of these plants exist all over North America. So you can get a version of these plants somewhere in North America. I really want to point out the difference between a hybrid plant and a native plant. Um, a hybrid plant is going to be a form of this native plant. So they took it, they restructured it, they made something that they wanted to see out of it. The reason that really matters between the difference between a native and a hybrid's not going to have it's not going to have as good a pollen, as good a nectar. The medicine that it provides for the insect is not going to be as good because this is a new plant. This is not the plant that the insect evolved with. So when you do go shop, if you do look for these plants, I suggest that you ask for the native versions, or that you simply go online and try to find the native seed version of it. One that I want to point out here is goldenrod. Goldenrod is one of the most amazing plants, not just for insects, but for birds as well. And it's actually one of the last ones to bloom in the United States. If we don't have big fields of goldenrod, this is one of the reasons our insects and animals are struggling. We used to have vast fields of this, and the seeds from the goldenrod, the roots from the goldenrod. It's just a incredibly medicinal plant. I read once in a book that if you drink goldenrod tea every day, that you'll be doing pretty well. So, um, let's see, next slide for me. So, eco-friendly gardens, right? Quickly gonna go through the compost and mulch stuff. I could teach you so much. I could talk for hours about that, but I want to make sure I get to the planning your space so that you guys really get an idea of what to do with that. So carbon sequestration through compost. One of the coolest things I learned about that is we can really start creating these programs to where our refuse centers, our recycling centers can do that there, right? Because that's where all our stuff goes. So here in Tahoe, we created a program where we collect it all and we send it off to a farmer who composts it himself. And he actually starts selling it to other farmers. So it's a really cool cycle there. As far as compost and water storage, so for every inch of compost that we can put on an acre of land, that's going to store 20,000 gallons of water there. That's really important in California, where our water is just, it's like a battle now. It's like a war of water, right? So if we really start thinking about putting compost, putting carbon material on top and getting it into the ground, then we can really start storing that water again. And you heard me talk about nutrient and mineral density. Well, that means your food is actually medicine. Right? nutrient and mineral deficient food is bad for you, and that's what a lot of the store sells. So with compost, simply we can really start making that food nutrient and mineral dense again. Um, so sustainable and regenerative practices. My favorite one is no-till, natural farming, and biomimicry, and all three of those kind of tie together as well. But they're all individual ways that people teach. So I'll give you some links there at the end where you can start checking this stuff out as well. Microbes. Okay, so um, fungi, right? A lot of us don't know much about it, but they are the builders of the environment. So once we start feeding them, which they love carbon, they love compost, they love mulch, they can start creating our environment there. Insect and animal homes. This is something that I've been doing lately a lot on my little farm is just providing spaces, providing different areas for insects and animals to actually live. So I'll talk about it a little bit more, but it's just simply as leaving a pile of leaves in the corner instead of bagging up your leaves and throwing them away. And then ethnobotany, if you don't know what that means, it is basically what the Native Americans, what our ancestors, it is the study of how they use nature. My idea is that we can start to restructure the food supply system by bringing in some of those foods that come from the forest. I would say at least 10% of what I eat is from the forest, and all the mushrooms I eat are from the forest. I don't actually go to the store and buy those. And then all my teas as well. Okay, next slide. And now planning your space, right? So again, the potato tower. This is incredibly easy, and you actually don't even need wire. I do some in buckets. I do some in piles. You can actually just lay potatoes on the ground, put straw over them, and then they'll do great that way too. Just wanted to make sure I point that out. That is one of the easiest ways to get yourself into gardening. And I don't really know anybody that hates potatoes, so it's a good one right there. So preparation soil is one of the things that matters the most. A lot of people just kind of go for the cheap soil at the store, think that that's not going to matter very much. One of the biggest things I want you to look for when you go to the store for soil is mycorrhiza, which is fungi with microbes, and then worm castings. So you got those two things that are going to work together to build up your soil. Well, again, when you're looking for soil, look for those two things right there. That's going to really help you. Seeds and plant starts, because they can be kind of sick at the store, especially Home Depot has like the worst seeds and plant starts. Start start thinking about, how can I say this? Looking for healthy plants, right? And when you think about seeds, really look for a company that is trustworthy. So actually read um, the reviews there. It's really easy to just go on and buy something or go to the store and just snatch what you first see, but this is going to be an important part of making sure that your garden is successful. Now, time and space, tending and care, you really got to think about how much time you have, where you can start, right? And don't overwhelm yourself. Don't go buy 6 tomato plants and you've never grown a tomato plant before, right? Maybe buy two and start there. Light, this is something that you have to consider. Here in Tahoe, we have maybe 4 to 6 hours, which compared to right down the hill, 1,000 feet down, they got anywhere from 8 to 10 hours. So we have to really consider where you're at, how much light, and then a lot of the plants that you buy, they'll tell you how much light you actually need there too. So, and then it's easy looking it up online. Watering, one of the biggest things that I think people struggle with because you have to water at about 20% saturation. So if I have 5 gallons of soil, I have to give it about 1 gallon of water. And most people, they maybe do half of that and they think, oh, I gave it a lot of water. But yeah, this one's a little bit harder. So if you can put that in your notes at about 20% water of what you have there, and then that's really going to give you a good idea. But then again, that's where the next one comes in. So depending on how much sun, how hot it is, this is where the invitation to really grow and like get into it is, right? And then cost, because you can really go overboard, right? You can really buy a lot of things that you don't need. So I want to get into creativity and ingenuity using natural resources. For our beds, we used cedar planks that somebody actually milled these cedar planks, and he just gave us the ends of it. He wasn't going to use the ends, so we built our beds out of that. As far as our soil, there was a big pile of native soil off to the side, so we decided to use that and actually develop it with our own compost, with our own minerals. So we ended up mixing our own soil, right? That's not as easy as I'm maybe making it sound, but I'm trying to give you tips on how to be creative here. And definitely, if you're going to use native soil, know what you have because you can have very deficient soil. Farming techniques practices. My favorite one, I would say, would be Korean natural farming. It really helps you look at the forest in a different way and try to bring the abundance of the forest into your house, into your farm. Seed saving, this I think goes, how do I say, underestimated maybe. A lot of people don't save their own seed. They keep buying it year after year after year, and that is a lot of what the cost comes from. So not only do I encourage you to save your own seed and figure out when to best harvest it, but I encourage you to start sharing them with your friends, sharing and trading them. And you can really start developing what I call a seed bank, so a community seed bank. And I maybe buy 2 to 3 packets a year of seeds, just of random stuff that I don't have. So every year we already know what we have, and when we go into it, that's great to know. And one of my favorite things is join or create social groups, right? I created a gardening group and then a mushroom group, and through those two, we've been able to learn as a community really, really well. And it's just great to be able to check with somebody else when something is going wrong and it's beyond your mind. Okay, so one last thing, as far as pollinators, how can we help, right? Just give you a few tips here. So create habitats. I talked about maybe leaving some leaves, leaving some twigs, and really trying to reconsider what a pretty yard looks like because insects, they don't really care for a pretty yard. They care for that messy forest look, and that's where they build their homes. So promote native gardens. You can ask your nurseries to carry more, share seeds, and really start to think about your garden and how you can promote through your garden. Most of my garden is native plants, but native plants that I can use for food, which is one of my favorite things there. And it really inspires people. They stop and look at the beauty first, and then I go into how I use it, and it just starts getting their brain really going. I love that. Reduce pesticide use. This is a huge one. Every time I go to the stores and I see more and more pesticides, I'm like, who's still using this stuff? Like, why is this even available anymore? Because we know different now, but it's not being promoted. So that's why I love what we're doing here. And let nature take its course. So that's what I talked about. Just let nature do its thing. Nature does composting, it does mulching, it does recycling. So let's learn more from her on how to be patient and how to really appreciate that time, right? We don't need to go too fast. We can definitely help nature go a little faster, but we don't want to go so fast that we disconnect ourselves from nature. Educate. So host neighborhood cleanups, take trash bags, teach the importance of microplastic pollution. That's huge, right? And encourage the wider community to really get into the forest. An initiative. So let's demand not just organic foods, conservation. Let's make demands towards more education, towards more programs to really start educating our youth. Right, the youth is really who needs this, and the youth is going to be who makes the difference here. So one big thing is go to the refuse center, the recycle center, and ask for that program that I was just talking about. Tell them we need to separate these things, send them to a farmer, or even you start the program because there's a lot of money in this. And through there, you can really close that cycle. So, food waste and carbon dioxide emissions are a big part of climate change. And we can really close that cycle just through these little programs. And you can actually involve schools in those programs too. So, okay, next slide. So I'm gonna present this because Selah is really has got a beautiful presentation and is going to go into it. This is just something I wanted to go into and present to you what I no one feel through this. So the cempasúchil, right, is the flower that's used in the Day of the Dead. So the Day of the Dead is actually a celebration. It's not a gloomy day. We celebrate our dead. We celebrate their coming back. We celebrate how they were in our lives. Right? And the tradition is attributed to the Mexica, also known as Aztecs. The celebration involves the creation of an altar with offerings, and you'll see the cempasúchil flower like you see in the picture here, which is the marigold, the Aztec marigold, it's called. The Mexica actually believe that monarch butterflies are the souls of the dead, and it's Sahila will go a little bit more into that. It's not just simply the dead, right? And the relationship between marigolds, cempasúchil, and the Dia de los Muertos can be linked to the butterfly because it is believed that the fragrance of the marigolds is how our ancestors can lead themselves back. So just like the monarchs are attracted by the scent of nectar, so are our ancestors, right? And we can really start to see the similarities here. Just like the monarch butterflies had those migration routes, you can really link that to our ancestors as well. So there's a lot here. Okay, next slide. So our altars, they can include a lot of different things. I think Sahila is going to go into this a little bit, so I'm not going to go through there. I'm just going to go into the significance, something that I learned here. So the celebration is meant to connect us to our ancestry and heritage, and also remind us of our finite place in nature and in history. The responsibilities we have to maintain the past, present, and future can be burdensome, but through the practice of tradition and remembrance, we can begin to reconcile not only the purpose of death, but the purpose of living as well. And I want to leave you with one last quote. If you don't know where you're going, you don't know where you're from. That's something I heard from Mr. Bob Marley, and it's really resonated not just in my heart, but in my head and in my whole soul. It encouraged me to go back to my root. I hope that resonates with you too.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you so much. You have shared a great deal of information with us today about how to start our own gardens at home. And for those that registered to this webinar, we did have a question there about whether you were interested in receiving seeds from us. And a lot of you said yes. And so we are very honored to be able to provide some of those seeds to you, and hopefully after you're inspired with this presentation and begin your journey into pollinator gardens, so you'll hear from us within the next couple weeks or so. But now I would like to pass it over to Selah from our partners at Latinos in Heritage Conservation.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, Luis. I'm so in awe of your work, and I've learned so much. So thank you for your work, and thank you so much for the conversation, Anna and Luis. Hola, everyone. My name is Selah Mota Casper. I'm the Executive Director of Latinos in Heritage Conservation, and we're a nonprofit that focuses throughout the country here, and we work to preserve the histories, tradition, and heritage of Latinxes, especially this month. It's Latinx Heritage Month, so happy Latinx Heritage Month. And because of that, I wanted to share one of the most beautiful examples of how nature y cultura are deeply intertwined in the story of our being, and just the story of the monarch and butterfly itself. As Luis shared, a lot of this is so culturally centered and historically centered in all of our indigenous roots. It's a story of memory, espirito, and cultural identity. It's also a very sacred and culturally important symbol to many indigenous cultures, from pre-Columbian to even to Mexico today and then the United States. We'll talk a little bit about that. So the link between myth and the monarch's annual return spans for many, many centuries, as we just learned. Next slide, please. So the monarch actually migrates and makes this epic journey, goes 3,000 miles across 3 different countries. So every fall, millions of monarchs will begin their extraordinary journey, and they travel these 3,000 miles through um, Mexico, United States, Canada, Canada, United States, and Mexico back. And we're going to talk about that cycle in a little bit. When they do go back to Mexico, they settle in Oyamel fir forest in two different states, in Michoacan and Estado de Mexico. And this is because the climate just is so perfect for them to be able to shelter and protect themselves throughout the winter months. What's really incredible about the monarchs is that the butterflies that actually arrive there are not the same butterflies that left the year before. It takes multiple generations to complete this cycle, and somehow they just find their way back to the same forest. So essentially, the monarchs that fly back to Mexico in fall are the great great grandchildren of the monarchs that flew from central Mexico in the spring. And we don't know why that is. You know, scientists are in awe of it because they're just drawn by their innate compass and embodied memory. And their wings know to take them back to their ancestral homes. And I think that's very much like us as humans who are called back to our lands, our memories, and our ancestors. It's such a wonder, but it's also so much more than biology, and I think really tells the story of who we are and our existence, which is woven into the history and beliefs and traditions in Mexico. Next slide, please. So butterflies arrive when our ancestors return. The timing of the arrival is so powerful. As we just learned, monarchs reach central Mexico in late October and early November. And just as families across central Mexico are preparing for Dia de los Muertos, so it really is very much a hand-in-hand celebration. I grew up, and many of you too probably grew up hearing, just be careful, love the monarch, let's nurture them because they carry souls within them. And that belief is still very much alive today, especially in the communities that celebrate and honor the rituals of Dia de los Muertos. And you can see, as we saw earlier in the imagery and ofrendas, that, there are marigolds, there are candles and calaveras. Next slide, please. So just thinking through some of its roots and how we've seen it in Mexica, Aztec, and pre-Spanish colonization beliefs. We see signs of different things such as warriors, soul, and the transformation of life. This connection between butterflies and souls, it goes back, as we heard from the Mexica Aztecas. Butterflies were linked to warriors who died in battle and also in human sacrifice. Women were also seen as emblematic of this as well when they died in childbirth. They were seen as brave warriors. The butterfly is also a powerful symbol of fire and water. Their fragile, fluttering wings are associated with the flickering flames, and it represents fire itself. The duality of it really speaks to the themes of transformation and bravery, and also the direction of the monarchs. Going north and from north, it's very symbolical in our indigenous beliefs, and it's tied to the death and the afterlife. So when millions of butterflies suddenly appear each fall, it's seen as the sacred return of the souls. Next slide, please. And we can see how important butterflies are in the expression of, in our culture and the expression of art, of writing and symbols that have been left behind. In the holy city of Teotihuacan, it's the largest thriving city during its time. It was known as the place of the gods and where the gods were created. And you see here an incense burner decorated with butterflies, and it's in the traditional of the flower world, and it's paradise, and it dates back to 900 BCE. We also see it in Aztec art with warriors depicted with butterflies imagery on their chest when they're going into war, carrying large butterflies shaped, on their back or in banners as they go into battle. We see them in the codex. And while we can't say for certain that they were watching the monarch butterfly itself as we see it, we know that the timing and that the scale of the migration was likely inspired by, a lot of this. And this is where the rituals came from and evolved into what we know today as Dia de los Muertos. Next slide, please. So as I've said, butterflies are symbols of the soul, and it's not unique only to Mexico. You see this throughout the world. Greeks saw butterflies as the embodiment of the psyche or of the soul. In Hindu tradition, butterflies symbolize reincarnation. In medieval Europe, butterflies were linked to resurrection and eternal life. So across cultures, people in the world have seen and looked at the transformation in this metamorphosis process of the butterfly, um, and to becoming a winged being, and it's seen as a reflection of life, death, and birth. But in Mexico, the symbol is uniquely alive and tied to a real living phenomenon through the migration butterfly itself. Next slide, please. So monarchs in Dia de los Muertos, living traditions today. So today, the monarch remains deeply embedded in Dia de los Muertos tradition. And during celebrations, you'll see costumes and parades of the monarcas. You'll see dancers that are wearing this. You'll see it in your ofrendas. A lot of people give away little butterfly monarcas. We hear them in songs, and we hear them referenced throughout, as well as their wings, which are so delicate and seen as very sacred. And as we all know, pop culture has recently also embraced the symbolism, and I hope you've seen it. If you haven't, please go and see Disney's Coco. It's very beautiful. But that movie really helped to bring international attention to the cultural background of Dia de los Muertos. It's a really cute movie, and I can watch it over and over again. And the abuela, and it reminds me so much of my abuelita, but just everything throughout it, the tradition, cultura, and the real meaning and spirit was really a gift to those living on this side, because many individuals did not know the connection of what that meant, because many of us were first generation like myself, or second, third generation, and have lost, because of colonization, have lost a lot of that memory. Again, it's linked back to, our indigenous roots, at the core. And I really want to talk and pause on that, because many of us here, or many of, our Anglo friends, celebrate Dia de los Muertos without really recognizing the traditions and how it is exactly how it's been carried down and regarded throughout, and began thousands of years ago. And some of the areas that I want to just point to is that, like, when we light a candle with a flame, when we place marigolds, when we celebrate and welcome monarchs, we're repeating those same rituals and observances that are rooted deeply in our indigenous understanding of life, death, and return. And really about cultural survival. And it's not just about the artifacts that we showed or language, but it's also the way that we celebrate our cultural traditions and honor our past and loved ones. And for me, that realization is very powerful. It shows, like Luis was talking about, it shows about us continuing to live and build on these traditions, continuing those traditions, and keeping alive the wisdom of our ancestors, without us even knowing it. So next slide, please. So unfortunately, monarchs were endangered, and now they're extremely vulnerable. Populations have declined significantly, as we saw in the graph that Luis showed earlier, especially in the 1990s. Much of it is because climate change, deforestation, loss of milkweed in the United States and in Canada, and these are all severe threats to them. But many communities are responding and doing things like Luis was just sharing with us and teaching us what we can do to help with repollination. In Michoacan, the indigenous communities are leading conservation efforts there. There's a nonprofit, Forest for Monarchs, that's helped plant over 10 million trees to restore the forest that the monarchs live in to help them survive. And we're also able to witness cultural survival. So protecting monarchs means that we're protecting the spiritual traditions and the beliefs and the stories that are carried with them as they migrate. Next slide, please. So lessons of the monarch, nature, memory, and resilience. For me, the monarch really teaches us resilience. It shows that even the smallest wings can carry the weight of generations. Their journey reminds us that there are no true borders in life or geography. And it also shows us that memory lives not only in families, but in nature itself. Monarchs carry the spirits of our ancestors, returning each year to remind us of our responsibility to protect both cultural and natural heritage. Through migration, endurance, and the return, these are all lessons that we're mirroring in our Latinx heritage that are deeply rooted within our own cultural roots, and they persist to regenerate. And so, us doing this, we're really regenerating just as a monarch is, even when our heritage or our spaces are overlooked and endangered. So, it really is a teacher for me. It's a teacher. It teaches me about life. It's cyclical. Even though there's a loss, there's not always an end, and that return is always possible. Next slide, please. When we protect the monarch, we protect our stories. And the monarch really is more than just a species. It's a messenger that connects us to our ancestors, to our traditions, and our future. It's Latinx Heritage Month, and I really ask you to reflect upon that and reflect upon your own traditions. And maybe you regarded something in your own family. Maybe it was food traditions, whatever it was. But I really, ask you to think on what that means to you, and just invite you to help to safeguard the monarch, and to carry that wisdom and everything that we've learned today, and to be able to carry that story forward, and just make sure that we're all doing what we can do to help ensure that future generations can stand underneath the same oyamel trees that our indigenous community did, millions of years ago. So with that, muchísimas gracias, and I thank you for your time.
Again, wow, thank you, Selah. I continue to be amazed at the power in our stories and the richness in our culture and our heritage as Latinos. I also want to quickly recognize the monarch is also a symbol that gives hope to our immigrant brothers and sisters, and want to recognize the sacrifice that our parents or our ancestors have made to move north, and just really want to recognize that sacrifice that has been made for a better life. Last but not least, I want to pass it over to my colleague Luis Cruz, who is our Latino Conservation Week program coordinator, to share some additional resources.
Hola, everyone. Hello, everybody. If you want to move into the next slide, Anna, thank you. So yes, I just want to first off thank you, Anna, and thank you all the panelists for helping us guide us how to become better pollinators, but also remind us what the meaning of the monarch, particularly for our Latino culture. And of course, I want to thank everyone here who joined us. I see close to 70 people in this room, and it's amazing that you took time out of your day to come and learn and celebrate Latino Conservation Week with us. With that, I do want to share, first off, as a Latino Conservation Week coordinator, I am here to support our partners on the ground who want to engage with the community around conservation and outdoor recreation. We just want as many of our comunidad to be able to enjoy the outdoor space, their outdoor space that is near their home, but also how we can celebrate, in our home, like we do, like Luis Rubio has said, like building your own pollinator garden as well. So please check out our Latino Conservation Week website. You'll be able to gain access to resources, submit events, but also find Latino Conservation Week events that are near your home. You could also follow that QR code. I do want to share one amazing partner that we have, is Cumbra Kids podcast. They have two amazing podcasts, all bilingual, available for free on all the major, wherever you get all your podcasts. One is focused around science or STEM. It's called Granelo. The other one on animals. So Camaleon is great opportunities. These are all focused around, our younger kids. It's very interactive. You'll be able to ask scientists questions, and there's a new episode every Tuesday and Thursday, and it's just an amazing opportunity to get our younger ones closer into these type of issues or topics. Next slide. Like I mentioned, on our website we have all the guides and toolkits and resources that help support you If you're looking to, either, do your own LCW event or maybe join one, we have everything from planning guides, activity ideas for kids, templates for flyers, templates to invite elected officials to your events. You can download all our logos. Again, you could just scan that QR code to be able to access it, but it's very easy. LatinoConservationWeek.com. Next slide, please. And lastly, I also want to share our first ever Latino Conservation Week virtual race. This is an opportunity, a fundraising opportunity to kind of help support and celebrate Latino Conservation Week. It started on September 13th and will be running through the end of Hispanic Heritage Month on October 15th. You can learn more about the virtual race, but really is very inclusive. You could walk, run, however you want. We just want our comunidad to be able to really, enjoy being outside, but also be able to celebrate what it means to be Latino in nature. And specifically for this group, I want to share a discount code for anyone that signs up before the end of Latino Conservation Week on the 21st. We'll get a 10% discount on if you use Semillas para Todos. Again, if you have any questions around Latino Conservation Week, the virtual race, I am here for you to support you. I'm here to make sure that you get the right resources and ensure that we continue to celebrate what our Latino culture and nature. Thank you again for giving us the opportunity to share this, and I hope to see you out there. All right. Gracias. Ana?
Thank you, Luis. Thank you for sharing all those amazing resources. We'll be sure to follow up with a copy of this slide so you can access them all. Here's a slide with all the links that Luis Rubio helped us put together so you can learn more about regional plants that you can plant in your garden, native plants, pollinator-friendly plants, and sustainable farming practices. So we'll follow up with you with that. And as we close, I just want to say, on behalf of Hispanic Access Foundation and the Conservation Network, I want to thank you again for joining us today. As we conclude, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the power in our stories, the power in our culture, and the power within ourselves. In Latino culture, the monarch butterfly serves as a reminder of migration, resilience, and transformation. By planting pollinator gardens, not only are we honoring our traditions, protecting our environment, and leaving a legacy of beauty for the next generation, I also invite you to carry the spirit of this workshop forward. Whether you plant one milkweed in a pot or you transform your whole backyard, your efforts matter. Together, we can create a mosaic of gardens that feed pollinators, that honor our culture, and that keep our natural world thriving. And with that, I'll just say happy Latino Conservation Week and happy Hispanic Heritage Month, and we'll see you next time. Thank you all for joining us. Bye.